Hello, and welcome to Attentive Healthcare Solutions webinar. We're excited to be presenting NextGen PM tools for managing unapplied deposits, refunds, and credit balances. My name is Chelsea Grover, and I'm the Marketing Communications Coordinator for Attentive. I'd like to take a moment to explain the process for today's presentation. First, I'd like to mention that this webinar will be recorded, and that we'll send out copies along with the slides and the recording within the next week. Next, for those of you who aren't familiar with Attentive, I wanted to share a bit of who we are with you. We specialize specifically in NextGen healthcare. We're good at getting data into, out of, around, and through NextGen. Basically, our goal in life is to make delighted clients by helping them get the absolute most out of their NextGen software investment. We are passionate about providing solutions for our healthcare provider partners, which in turn help them to improve patient care, enhance the patient experience, and maintain a financially healthy practice. To sum it up, we do everything NextGen. Next, I wanted to mention an upcoming educational webinar that we'll be presenting on Wednesday on how to make your NextGen workflow more efficient with defaults and favorites. Whether you have been using NextGen for years or are new to the system, this webinar will help you understand how to use NextGen more efficiently with defaults and favorites. During the webinar, we will demonstrate time-saving preferences and tools available that will help decrease staff frustration and increase productivity by removing repetitive tasks. You should have received an invitation to register for that yesterday afternoon, but if you didn't, just head to the Events and Education page on our website to register directly. Okay, so back to today's presentation. At the end of the presentation, we'll open the floor up to questions from you. We'll answer all the questions at the end, but you may type them in the questions area of the webinar control panel whenever they occur to you. And finally, for audio clarity purposes, everyone's phone will remain muted throughout the entire webinar. If you experience audio issues, please use the chat box to let us know so we can resolve them. And again, questions may be entered in the questions box. So without further delay, I'd like to introduce our presenters for today. Tom Seco is Attentive's Business Development Manager and subject matter expert on the products. And Joel Schultz is the Director of Product Solutions at Attentive, which means that he and his team are the people that actually build these great programs and are thus in a great position to demonstrate it. So Tom, I'm going to go ahead and pass the webinar off to you. Feel free to get started when you're ready.
All right, thank you very much, Chelsea. So as Chelsea mentioned, today we're going to talk about ways to effectively manage your deposits, your unapplieds, your copay dollars, and we're going to do that by showing you a couple add-on products that we have created over the years that will enable you to more effectively manage your credit balances on patient accounts and issuing refunds, and that's our Refund Manager product. And then we'll also show you how to more effectively manage your deposits, your copays, and your unapplied balances on your patient accounts, and that's through the use of our Unapplied Deposit Manager software. And then I will come back and give you a quick overview of who we are. Today's format of the webinar is I will go through an overview of using a couple slides of each product, and then I'll turn it over to Joe, and he'll take you through the demonstration of products. So we'll start with the Refund Manager product, and then we'll carry that same format through to the Unapplied Deposit Manager software. Before we get started, we have a quick poll that we would like you to answer for us.
Looks like responses are starting to trickle in, so thank you for those. We'll leave it open for another minute here while everybody has a chance to be able to select one. This just helps us to better gauge where we should focus more of our attention on during the webinar.
Okay.
Yep, so let's go ahead and close this. And so it looks like people seem to be interested in pretty much all of it. So that's great. And thank you very much for that feedback. And looks like we'll be covering it all, Tom.
All right, great. Thank you very much. So the first product, as I mentioned, is our Refund Manager product. And this is the product that will allow you to efficiently and effectively manage your credits and refunds in your system. So, like I said, I'll take you through a couple slides just to give you a quick overview of what you're going to see and how it's going to work, and then I'll turn it over to Joe, and Joe will take you through the presentation. So, Refund Manager really is a solution that allows you to streamline and automate the processing of credit balances on your patient accounts. It enables you to quickly find the credit balances on the patient accounts, allows you to apply credits to other encounters. It integrates with your accounting application so that you can move that refund information over to your accounting application in a seamless manner and allow you to quickly, allow your accounting staff to quickly print the refund checks as well. It is multi-practice aware, so for those organizations that have multiple practices set up in NextGen, Refund Manager is multi-practice aware, meaning that if you have a guarantor account spread across a couple different practices, you'll be able to see that full financial picture within Refund Manager. This is a slide that's I'm gonna take you through just a high-level overview of the process and where Refund Manager affects that process. Typically, when you have a credit on a patient account, you're either going to use that or manage that in a proactive manner or a reactive manner. In a reactive manner means that somebody calls up, a patient calls up and says, I have a credit on my account. I would like to have a refund issued to me. In a proactive manner, you're working your credits on a regular basis, whether it's through a report or just on a regular process that you have in place every week or every 2 weeks or every month, but you have some method that you're proactively going through them. In either case, you're going to look at the encounter details, you're going to look at transaction details, you're going to look at the account details, and then you're going to take some action on that, and you're going to determine whether that credit should be applied to an account that has an open balance on it, or you're going to decide that it should be refunded. Refund Manager allows you to, in the way that the information is presented to you, allows you to view that information and make quick decisions about what to do with that credit. When you get done with that process, you take the credits that you've identified as refunds and get those over to the accounting group. How that gets over to the accounting group happens many different ways in many different organizations. It happens with moving a file over. It happens in an Excel spreadsheet. It happens by dropping a piece of paper on someone's desk. It happens through word of mouth. But somehow you get that information over there, and then the accounting people have to enter in the name of the person that's going to receive the refund, their address, their city, the state, the zip, and the amount of the refund check. All has to be manually entered. And Refund Manager, through the automation piece, moves that information over to your accounting system because we integrate with your accounting system, and you don't have to enter that information in manually. At the end of the process, when you're done printing the refund checks, on the back end, some organizations will enter that printed check information as far as check number, check date, check amount, back into NextGen and back into the patient account or patient chart. Refund Manager does that for you automatically through our one module that we created. So it will automatically update that information for you where you don't have to manually do that. So we call it streamlining on the front end and automation on the back end. The 3 modules that you're going to see in the demonstration that Joe takes you through, the Credit Scout module is the first module, and that's the module that allows you to find the credit balances, allows you to take action on those credit balances. The Batch Detective module is the module that's going to move the refund information over to your accounting application. And then the Importer module is the last module that you're going to see in the demonstration. And that's the module that moves the printed check information back over into NextGen and updates the patient account or patient chart. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joe, and Joe is going to take you through a demonstration of it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Chelsea, and thank you everyone who's attending this afternoon or this morning, depending on what time zone you're in. We're going to cover Refund Manager right now. We're going to cover it a little bit quickly, but the good news is if you miss something, feel free to ask a question at the end, or we'll be following up and we can do a one-on-one demonstration with your practice and cover how it operates in greater detail. Refund Manager is a NextGen add-on. When we install it into your environment, it registers into NextGen Practice Management, and for the people who have access, it'll be available on their add-ons menu. So we'll go ahead, go in here, launch Refund Manager. When Refund Manager launches, it's smart enough to figure out which environment you're pointing at, ngprod, ngtest, ngdevel, what user ID you are, so that we can tag information with the who, when information, just like you do in NextGen when you're doing operations. So it's really been designed to be a well-integrated product in the NextGen environment. It's very mature in what it does. 2020 is actually the 15th anniversary of Refund Manager. So it started out as kind of a small tool for extracting refunds, and it's really grown into a all-around line item credit management tool. As Tom mentioned, we're going to cover 3 modules today, the 3 most important ones. The first one we're going to jump into is going to be the Credit Scout. That's your NextGen facing piece of Refund Manager, where you're finding those credits sitting out there in your NextGen financials, and you're going to take some action on them, whether that's refund them, move them around, or move them to the task, the work log to be worked on later. After we've processed some of these credits and moved some around, created refunds, for the ones that are refunds, we need to get those out to the accounting system. Tom just mentioned we have some great integrations with various accounting systems. Some are direct, where it'll talk right into the accounting system to set up vendors and payments. Some are through files. It really depends on the capabilities of that accounting system. So we'll move to the Batch Detective, and the Batch Detective is that piece that's going to look at your NextGen batches that have refunds in them and push them over into accounting. The cool thing about the Batch Detective is that it can pick up refunds whether you did them by hand in NextGen or you did them using Refund Manager. It doesn't mind either way. It can move those batches of refunds out to the accounting system. Then they can focus on just reviewing their check batch and printing their checks instead of having to do hours of data entry. And then to wrap up the cycle, we're going to do an import back from the accounting system into NextGen, and that's going to populate the check number, check date, and check amount, as Tom mentioned earlier, in the NextGen, again, without you having to do all that data entry to put that information into it. So let's jump into the Credit Scout, the NextGen facing piece of Refund Manager. A lot of these screens are designed to be similar to the screens you use today in NextGen Practice Management. So the search criteria is on the top, the results show up on the bottom, you use the right grid. It makes for a real smooth transition from people who already know PM into learning and using Refund Manager effectively. We have some options up here to be able to search for specific refunds by beginning letters of first or last name. You can put in a range of account or encounter numbers separated by commas if you're looking for specific accounts or encounters that you want to work refunds on. If you're cleaning up your database or just working a range of current data, we give you a date range in order to search a certain chunk in NextGen instead of having to search the whole database every time, because for many of you, your NextGen databases are very large, so you don't want it sitting out there churning. So normally what we'd recommend is searching kind of a 90-day window, right, that keeps sliding back so that the closest refunds, you know, maybe the current 60 days you're ignoring because those are still in motion, but you get to day 61 through maybe day 120 or 150, and that's, you know, kind of the sweet spot of the window for keeping refunds current. But the net is we give you, you know, many different ways to search for these credits in NextGen. Now, normally when we're working the credits in NextGen, there's a couple passes that you make. The first pass is, let's go ahead and find our candidates where we want to move money around. We want to do a distribution, okay? We don't want to send the money out of the practice just yet, especially if there's a place we can take and apply the money. So we have these filters up here that help us find and qualify what the data is that we're getting. So if we can, you know, find exactly what you're looking for and then qualify that the payments are greater than the charges, that makes life a lot easier right out of the gate. And we have some additional tools for doing research built into Refund Manager too. So I'm going to go ahead and click Find. and it's going to pull up several of the candidates for distributions. And again, a distribution, when it's searching for those, it's searching for credit in one place and where money's owed in other places. All right, so I'm not going to go through excruciating detail here because we're tight on time, but there's a couple of these I want to show you. So let's go ahead and go down our result list here. What we're seeing at the top level is the guarantor, some information about them, the patient credit, the payer credit. Now for moving money around, that's just patient money that we distribute because of all the rules that are applicable for insurances. We let NextGen still handle kind of cycling those balances through secondary and primary insurances and so on. But for this functionality, this distribution functionality, it focuses on the patient balances. So if I go ahead and expand this out, I can get more information under the guarantor who has this credit here. So I can see what account they are. I can see, in this case, it's always going to be guarantor, but if we're in refunds, we can see the payers too. I can see the encounter with the credit and also down to the charge level. Now, it's telling me I can move this money around, but we want to see how it's going to move this money around. So we can right mouse and do a preview. And by default, Refund Manager is going to move the money kind of oldest to newest. All right, so in this case, we have a $50 credit here on the left in red. So we're going to pull that $50 credit from encounter 1212 SIM 99212, and we're going to move it over here to the same encounter, but a different charge. So maybe the whole payment was posted to one charge instead of the other charge. And this way, it's going to take that extra money from the first charge and apply it against the charge where money's still owed. So that's a scenario that our clients tell us happens more often than they'd like. Now, let's say you don't want to go oldest to newest with these distributions. You want to be able to influence how the money is distributed. Well, we have a screen to handle that too. So I'm going to take Oscar here, and I'm going to right mouse, and we'll do a distribution preview just to show you what's going to happen by default. Again, encounter 1213 has a $295 credit. We're going to take 236 of that and apply it on the right. And we're going to take 59 of it and apply it against the 67 over here. But let's say we wanted to pay off this one and do a partial on the other one. So we want to kind of flip it so that we're paying off, the other one first instead of the oldest. Well, we give you a screen to do that too, where you build those pairings of transactions. So you take your credit and then you decide what you're going to apply it against, and you build a match, and now it's deducted from those balances. And we can go ahead and build that down. So now you have some control. In fact, you could leave credit out there if you wanted to. For the purpose of the demonstration today, I'm going to go ahead and consume it all. So then when you're done with that phase, you go ahead and process your selected items. These are your NextGen transaction codes. Today, we're only going to focus on the first one, which is for moving money within the practice. We do have the ability to move money out of a practice and into another practice for those of you that are multi-practice. I'm going to hit start. It's going to show me a summary of the work it's going to do. I'm going to tell it yes, go ahead and proceed. And it went through and created those distributions for us in NextGen in our batch. So it moved the money around by simply clicking around without us having to key in the amounts and the transaction codes and the lower half of the transaction screen with the charges. It's streamlining that for you. It's taking care of that for you on your behalf in NextGen. All right, so now the next phase would be after you've done your distributions where you've moved money around, you're still going to have money where you want to do a refund. So I'm going to switch my filtering here so that I can find good candidates for refunds. And in this case, we'll see we have some refunds that are due the insurances and some refunds that are due to the patients, really the guarantors in that case. So I'm going to pick several of these for us to look at. I'm going to take Jennifer down here. Jennifer has $122 in credit. And again, if I expand down, I'll see that there's 3 encounters making up that total credit. If I total these 3 numbers, it comes out to the 122. We can even see down if there were multiple charges with credits on them, it would show us that too. If we just want to refund one of these, we can pick the checkbox in the R column and just refund one of them. If we want to refund all of them, we can refund all of them. Now, you're going to want to do additional research from time to time, so we give you some tools in Refund Manager to look deeper. We give you a screen that mimics the financial summary in NextGen, another one that mimics the account summary in NextGen. So you can kind of get a full picture of all the charges and payments that have been going on to determine if you want to do the refund right here in Refund Manager. In fact, if you click on the encounter number, you'll see a screen that mimics the transaction tab in NextGen too. So we're trying to avoid having to toggle back and forth too much between Refund Manager and NextGen, giving you the tools you need to streamline that decision making. So we'll see, our charges up here, our payment down here, and we have a $122 credit. So similar to the distributions, instead of us going through and manually doing all those transactions by hand, if we want to do several refunds, we simply just do our research and click the checkboxes, and Refund Manager, when we tell it to process, is going to go create all those transactions for us in NextGen. So 8 transactions just got created on our behalf for refunds in NextGen. So that's the streamlining power of this. You're still making the decisions, but when you say you want to do something with it, move the money around or refund the money out, we're going to speed that up for you greatly by eliminating that data entry. So let me go into NextGen, and what we'll do now is we'll post our batch that has the refunds and the distributions, and then we'll take a quick look at the charts in NextGen and what that looks like. So we'll balance, we'll post. So again, all the work Refund Manager is doing goes into NextGen as if you had done it by hand. So as far as NextGen's concerned, it doesn't know the difference on if Refund Manager did it or you did it, because we're using our 20 plus years of experience with NextGen to put that data in there and have those transactions built for you without you having to key them in. So let's take a quick look at a distribution. So I'm going to look at the account level, and we'll pick account 290 here. And I'll go to the account summary. And here are the 2 transactions we created today to move money around. We'll see the net is 0 because it's positive and negative of the same amount, right? We took money from one, put it in the other. So if we go ahead and open this chart, we can see the transactions that were created here to move the money to the other encounters. And also in the tracking notes, we're giving you the batch it was in and the encounter and SIM, the charge that it came from and where it's going to. In fact, in addition to that, with each of those moves, we're also going to create some encounter notes to give you further documentation. By default, the notes are sealed, but with the current version of Refund Manager, there's an option to not have them sealed. We've had clients in the past request that, and a lot of the features that wind up in Refund Manager are actually from practices such as yourselves. So now let's take a look at what a refund looks like. So I'm going to kind of slide back here to my batch listing report, and what we'll do is we'll pull up one of the charts, and maybe what I'll do is Jennifer, we'll pull up her encounter 1207. She's the one who had 3 refunds, one on each encounter that we did. So if we go here again, here's the refund transaction that got created for you. The batch that it's in, this is going to be replaced when we finish the cycle by the check number, check date, check amount. And similar to the distribution, you're going to get your encounter note here with information, who created the refund, who it's to. When we do the export to the accounting system, I'll show you in a minute, we're going to get another note here letting you know kind of where we are in the process. So this is what the batch looks like in NextGen from Refund Manager. You can have separate batches for distributions and refunds or do it all in the same. We don't mind, it's a matter of your preferences. So the first part was the Credit Scout that we just went into that's covering the NextGen side. Now we got to get those refunds out of NextGen and into the accounting system. We have a dozen of these we directly support. We have clients that have written their own integration using our CSV and XML file outputs into other accounting systems. I'm using QuickBooks right now. That's one that we use directly. So I'm going to find my batch or batches that have refunds in them, and I'm going to pick them using the checkbox. I'm going to say, you know what, go ahead and do the export to the accounting system. For QuickBooks, it's asking us if we want to consolidate any checks. Some accounting systems do this on their own, so you don't need to use this screen in Refund Manager. But for one like Jennifer, it's going to send over one check with 3 detail lines instead of 3 separate checks. So in just a few seconds, that information has been pushed into the accounting system without accounting having to be in the data entry business, right? They get an Excel spreadsheet or some report and they're having to key it all in. That becomes a thing of the past. Now it either will talk to the accounting system directly or import a file with the vendors and the check information in it. So if we go to our accounting system, we can see our checks are out there waiting to be printed. I'm going to bring up the check view here and we can back up. Here's our checks for Jennifer and a couple of the other people that we did. Okay, well, no, there's no check number yet because they haven't been printed. So the accountants are happy. They haven't had to spend their day doing data entry. They get their check batch in, they review it, post it. When they're ready, they go ahead and print those checks. So all the check printing happens in the accounting system just like it does today. So I'm going to print out my checks. I'm going to say, yeah, they all printed okay. And now we have check numbers assigned to these. So coming up is this last piece Tom was talking about, where we're going to quickly and automatically import those check numbers into NextGen so you have them available to you. So let's go back to Refund Manager. And again, these steps can all be done the same day. They can be done days apart. It works fine either way. I'm going to find my export that I did. It says it went to QuickBooks, so it's going to go grab it from QuickBooks. I'm going to do an import. And it found my refunds and matched them up to the transactions in NextGen. So now, if we go back to Jennifer's chart, we'll see that the transaction notes, instead of having the batch, contain the check number, check date, check amount. And since we consolidated these 3 refunds into one check, we get the total check amount here. And as promised, we got the export note when the refund was sent out. And this documents the address that was in play and sent to the accounting system, because there's several levels of refund addresses. Refund Manager has an address book for alternate addresses for refunds. NextGen has the capability to do alternate refund addresses. And then you have kind of the basic default addresses that are in there too. So this will capture in this note what address was in play there. So quick recap, this is the Refund Manager process. We start with the Credit Scout, where you find your credits and decide if you're going to distribute them, if you're going to refund them. If it's a real mess, you may just put it into the work log. There's all kinds of great search criteria at the top for slicing and dicing and getting those credits that you want. After you've done that work and you're ready to post your batch, you go into NextGen, post the batch. You can then export the batch to the accounting system automatically, and then import the check information back into NextGen when you're done with Refund Manager. Tom, I'll turn it back to you.
Hey Joe, before we do that, could you answer a question that came through before we move on to the next one? Does the redistribute, oh my gosh, I can't say the word now. When you redistribute it, does the dollars have an audit trail on the original encounter? For example, will we see money transfer from/to onto the encounter?
Yes, you're going to have those notes that are in there. You're going to have the documentation and the transaction notes, and you're going to have the the ability to toggle between the encounters and see the movement of the money. In fact, that's going to be done usually as an account transaction, so they'll be tied together, the plus and the minus between the encounters.
Great, thanks Joe. Tom, I'm going to pass it back off to you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Joe, for going through that and showing how we can more effectively manage our credit balances on patient accounts and streamline the issuing of refunds. The next product that we're going to show and go through is how you can efficiently and effectively manage your deposits, your co-pays, and your unapplied balances. We know that some of the organizations on the webinar today do take deposit money, so take money in advance of services, and almost everybody takes co-pays. So you do have to deal with the unapplied balances, and our software product allows you to more effectively manage that. So as I mentioned, it lets you manage your copay related unapplied balances. It lets you to manage effectively the deposit money taken in advance of services. It works at both the encounter level and the account level. We have, over the years, 15 years or so, we have worked with our individual clients. Some of them have come to us and said, we have this unapplied issue. Can you write us a script or a short program that allows us to manage that money within our organization? And over the years, we've developed all of these different rules and combination of rules of one, how to apply the unapplied money within the organization, and we put that into this program. So you'll see that there's, as Joe goes through the demonstration, you'll see that there's many ways that you can find the unapplied balances and do some type of take some type of action on it. It does allow you to pick specific amounts of money, meaning that if you have a common $10 copay or a common $20 copay or $50 copay, common numbers like that, you can specifically find those dollar amounts and take some action on it. In addition, you can also apply the money or over apply the money, if you will, and put the line item into a credit state, which then can be refunded at a later date. So Joe's going to take you through this and show you how it all works. So I'm going to turn it back over to Joe.
All right, we're going to switch back to my computer here, and then I'll take you through the Unapplied and Deposit Manager. Now, Unapplied and Deposit Manager, even though it's a newer tool, a newer product and name for iTentiv, it's really the result of scripts we've been writing to help clients clear up their unapplieds for the past 15 or so years. So what we did was we took all that knowledge and all those scripts and kind of combined them into a super script that we put a set of rules around, and we give you a user interface to manage those rules. Now, a little different from Refund Manager. Refund Manager, you typically roll out to all the people you want to work refunds, because we want you to interactively make those decisions on whether you want to refund them or not, because money's going out of the practice, so that's important. The Unapplied and Deposit Manager, the heavy lifting is going to get done overnight by a job that can get loaded into your BBP. So what this user interface is going to do here is just help you set up the rules for how that job is going to run. Okay, so usually only 1 or 2 people would have access to this because you don't want people stepping on each other. And then overnight it's going to run, do the work, and in the morning you'll have some batches with the movements of your unapplieds to review and go ahead and post those. So in looking at the screen, it looks like there's a lot going on, but it really breaks down quite nicely into what it does. In the upper left is your encounter unapplied loop, okay? So as we're going through the money that is sitting on the encounters in the unapplied bucket, what do you want to do with that money? And there's some really basic stuff, right, that you can do today in PM. If the amount's a match, go ahead and apply it. Some other things we do is if the amount is greater than, you can either just apply it up to the patient amount. So if you had $50 due, but you had 60 in unapplied, you could say apply it up to the patient amount and leave $10 sitting out there. Or you could over apply it. So you'd put $60 on top of that 50. And then what you could do, now that you have that unapplied money moved down onto a line item with a credit, you could sweep back through at a later time with Refund Manager and refund those additional amounts now that they're on line items. All right, so we give you some options for that. If the unapplied amount is less than, do you want to apply it? Tom mentioned that we were able to do specific amounts, and this is a great tool for cleaning up your copays. So if we say, if the unapplied equals one of these specific amounts, I'll either apply it up to the patient amount due or go ahead and over apply it. We think it's a copay, it should be on there, and we'll resolve it later. So if we click one of these checkboxes, it comes up with a screen, and we can enter in a number of different copay amounts. All right, and we can keep adding these, and then it would respect those amounts and use this rule if it matched. So we'll go ahead and force it, even if it doesn't match the patient amount due. In fact, if we only wanted to do those, we could turn off these upper rules here and just use that one. So there's quite a variety in the way we can make things happen. Now, in addition to these checkboxes up here, I'm going to cover these last three in a moment, but in addition to these checkboxes up here, we can kind of scope these out. So this encounter scope down here on the left in kind of this lightly shaded box really affects how the encounter processing is going to work. Are there specific SIMs and modalities you're looking to clean up? Do you want to apply first or apply only to those SIMs or modalities? Do you want to skip certain SIMs? Maybe you have some dummy SIMs out there that you don't want to apply against. If there's certain transaction codes, do you want to skip that amount? As you're testing this, it's useful to be able to slice and dice by provider and location, so you don't chew up all your test data each time you're running this and kind of figuring out what set of rules are going to benefit you the most. And again, you know, certain things like encounter date, start, stop, dollar amounts, if things are outside the range, don't process them using the tool. You're going to do those manually, that type of stuff. Now, these last three checkboxes that I didn't cover yet handle what to do if there's still an amount remaining on that encounter, in the encounter unapplied. So your choices are kind of starting from the bottom. You can leave it out there and just create a task. If you check that one, it'll pop up and ask you the task type that you want to use and the subject line that you want filled in on it. If you want it just moved to the account, or if you want it moved to the account unapplied in what we call tagged. And this is where the deposit functionality of this comes in. So we've run into clients that are using their unapplieds to hold deposits for future services. And what we worked with them on is, gosh, you know, what would that look like if we were going to use those deposits going forward? How would we know what deposits to use where, so on and so forth? And by breaking down the manual process, we were able to come up with a scheme where we can map the transaction code that was used to take in the money to future SIMs and or modalities to use the money. So we have what are called these tag sets, which is that cross-reference. What I have here is a tag set that was set up for fertility. And if we look at it, there's different rules here on the left for the tagging of the money. So when we take in the money into unapplied, whether that's at the encounter or the account unapplied level. So if it uses one of these transaction codes, so in this case, patient deposit fertility, we're going to tag it with fertility deposit. If it's patient deposit surgery, we're going to tag it with surgery deposit. So now we're going to kind of set that money aside in the processing each night, and we're not going to use it for anything except for the SIMs and modalities that have the matching tag here on the left. So if I go up here to fertility deposit, these first two lines would be used to apply those. So either a modality of maternity care or a SIM of 57022. And you can add to these, you can add additional rows and set up additional mappings. All right, so the NetNet as part of the installation will help you set up these rules and tune it if you do want to use it for the deposits. It's a great feature because you're not depending on people every day to go through and roll that unapplied money forward into procedures that have been done. The job will run each night. It'll look and see, oh, what money do I have tagged for what, and how can I use that money against these charges? All right, so this one says, you know what, move it up and see if we can tag it And then we could use this in conjunction for anything that can't be tagged that you just want to generically move up to the account. All right. Then on the upper right here, so the upper left here was your encounter loop. On the upper right is your account loop. So your account unapplied processing. What are we going to do with kind of that pool of money that's up at the account level sitting in the unapplied bucket? Well, if we're doing the deposit stuff, we can use these first checkboxes here. So we're going to go ahead and find any new money that was put directly to the account unapplied, and we're going to tag it just like we did over here for future use. Then we're going to try and use that money to see if there's any encounters with the appropriate SIMs and or modalities where that money can be drawn from. And if we're only doing deposit processing, basically we turn on this checkbox that says, you know what, if we use the money for any of this, don't use any of the following rules for the money. Now, if you're not doing deposits, if you're just cleaning up your co-pays and you have kind of some prepays that come in before a visit and then by the end of the visit it should have been moved over but wasn't, those types of things, you still have the ability to draw from the account unapplieds and say, you know what, try and find the first matching patient amount, try and find the oldest patient amount due. If there's still money left after that, find the most recent encounter with a credit, or just put it on the newest or oldest encounter. So there's ways to still force things down onto a line item should you wish to do that. If you don't wish to do that, you simply leave the checkboxes unchecked. So below the checkboxes here on the right is kind of the account scope, and that's going to let you, set the range of names that you're going to look at, the maximum number of accounts you're going to process at a time. Again, those dollar amounts out there. Another nice feature is that, you want to make sure encounter balances are 0, and you can do this on both the encounter side and for all the encounters under the account on the account side. So we give you a number of different options here, and again, we'll work with you, but kind of the takeaway here is that this tool can do both the generic cleanup of the unapplieds, but also manage the roll forward of deposit money as procedures are done. So now in production, if we had the job set up and it would run nightly, we'd pick either our run once or run nightly, depending on the rules that we set up. If it was just a one-time cleanup thing and then we were going to do something the next day and have that run forever, we could switch that. And we'd hit save, and then that night our job would run and we'd come in the morning and we'd have some new batches out there. And if we like those batches, we could go ahead and post them. If we don't like them, we could either prune them or delete them altogether. But while you're testing, you may want to decide, you know what, I'm going to run these interactively and see the results that I get. And what I'm seeing down here is just a representation of the transactions that were created for us in NextGen. In fact, if you're going to compare it, you can save this grid out to Excel and compare it into NextGen. Now, for that deposit handling, because it's kind of a enhanced function sitting on top of NextGen, so NextGen has reports that'll help you with most of this. But for the deposit stuff, we give you a tag set report that'll show you how money's being tagged. All right, which tag set's in use, the account, if it was posted on the encounter and moved up to the account, the tag that was used. So, in this case, let's go down to fertility deposit. So the money was paid, it was tagged with fertility deposit, and then we used part of it over here to apply against a SIM that was part of that cross-reference. All right, so we'll give you this report to be able to monitor how your deposits are rolling forward. And again, this can be saved out to Excel also for future reference and record keeping. So just like Refund Manager, this is going to do the work on your behalf in NextGen. In fact, if we go into NextGen, we'll have our new batches that got created. You get to pick the naming for these batches for the description. I just did test encounter and test account for our demonstration here. But just like any batch in NextGen, you can open it up, step through the transactions. If you're just testing and want to try something again, you can delete the batches and start all over and adjust your rules. So the goal here was not so much that the world needed another unapplied system, but there were several holes we needed to plug for things clients were asking for in the unapplied processing, but more so also in the deposit processing too. And that's really the goal of this, is to give you something that runs overnight once you set the rules. It's kind of the old Ron Popeil set it and forget it, where it's going to go ahead and create those batches for you, and then you'll have them the next morning in NextGen to be able to review and post. Tom, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Joe. So what we just saw is two products that that manage your credit balances on patient accounts and your unapplied deposits, as well as your copay dollars, your deposit money, and your unapplied dollars. Both products increase the efficiency and effectiveness of your staff, as you just saw. So what I want to do is just take a couple minutes to talk about who we are for the people on the webinar that don't know who iTentive is. While I'm doing that, you could also, if you have any questions at this point, you can enter your questions into the question box there while I'm going through just 2 slides and a couple minutes. So iTentive was founded in 2003. We have 20+ years of experience with NextGen. We have 40-some employees in the company, most of which are consultants that travel from organization to organization, working with the organizations to improve workflows, improve business process, improve reporting, to allow you to make more efficient, get more efficient with NextGen, but also help improve decision making as well. If you take the 20 years and the 2003, they do not add up, and the reason for that is iTentive started out as the IT department for a medical organization. And back in the late 90s and early 2000s, when the business mantra back then was focus on what you do best and outsource the rest, the medical organization was going to outsource the IT group. And the leaders of the IT group said, well, if you want to do that, what we would like to do is form our own company and provide services back to you. They agreed to do that, and from that point forward, we have worked with over 350 to 400 clients that use NextGen. And during this time frame, we have become a strategic partner with NextGen as well. We generate our revenue through basically 5 revenue streams. We generate it through consulting, where, as I mentioned, have consultants on staff that can work with you on workflows and business processes, work with you on revenue cycle matters as well, compliance and optimization of NextGen. We have a group of developers that can develop custom templates for your application. We have a group of developers that work in Joe's organization that have developed our productivity tools, of which Refund Manager is one, but we have several others as well. We have our own, we have a group of developers that can provide, or a group of technology folks that can provide IT managed services, meaning that we can support your desktops, your laptops, your printers, your local area networks, things like that. We also have our own data center, so we can do complete hosting out of our data center as well. We can provide support for your help desk support for your infrastructure, as well as NextGen, and that's how we generate our revenue through these 5 revenue streams. We also are a reseller as well, so we can resell NextGen products. So that's a little bit about who we are at this point in time. Some next steps, if you have any questions later on that come up after, within the next week or a couple weeks, and you want to give myself a call or Joe a call, we can answer any questions that you have. If you would like to see a more detailed demonstration of these products that we just went through, and be able to ask specific questions as they would apply to your specific organization, we can schedule that as well. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Chelsea, and we can take any questions that you have.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tom, and thank you, Joe, for the demo. Looks like we do have a number of questions. I'll try to go through them in the order that we got them, which I think should help to keep them straight which product they're referring to. But feel free to send me another follow-up question if I get it wrong. So this one, I believe, is in reference to Refund Manager. Tom, how does it know, or I'm sorry, Joe, how does it know which insurance to refund to for COB issues?
It refunds to the insurance that owns the bucket that the credit is in. So if Aetna is COB2 and that's where the credit is, that's how it would determine where the refund goes. And extending that out, that's how it determines if it's a patient refund or not. So it uses the bucket that the credit is sitting in.
Great, thanks, Joe. Next question, is a BellaMIP fund accounting supported?
Yes, it is. We generate files that can be imported into a BellaMIP.
Awesome. Next question, can I get a copy of this recording? Yep, I'll be sending out a copy of the recording and the slides to everybody who registered for this webinar within the next week, so keep your eyes out for that. Occasionally they end up in people's spam folders for some reason, so if you don't get it, feel free, you can get it directly from our website once I get it posted in the events and education page, and again, that'll be within the next week. Otherwise, you can also always reach out to Tom or Joe. You see their information up on the screen, and they'd be happy to send it directly to you as well. Okay, is there a specific way to apply unapplied credits to specific CPD's service items?
Yes, it's part of both the deposit management we were talking about with that mapping of transaction codes to SIMs or modalities, which are really just groupings for SIMs. Also, if you're not using the deposit stuff, in the encounter scoping, there was the ability to say apply only or apply first to a SIM or modality. So there's a couple different spots where you can address that using the Unapplied tool.
Great, thank you, Joe. Next question. Does this tool capture line items within negative balances for which the system did not create an unapplied credit?
For line items with negative balances, typically those would be, sitting out there as a line item credit. Now, if you wanted to do something with those, that's where Refund Manager would come into play if it's already on the line item. If it's still in the unapplied, that's where, the Unapplied and Deposit Manager would come into play. So that's kind of the delineation between the two of them. If there was something you need that didn't fall into that category, definitely reach out to us via email and let us know, and we can put together a meeting to address it.
Thank you. Next question. Does this work with NextGen version 583.1.127?
Yes, it does. It works with 583, 590, 59123, and soon to be 594. It's been working with NextGen since Practice Management 3.4, and we've spent the last 15 years keeping it current with NextGen. Fortunately, this part of the NextGen database really doesn't change that often, but we do keep up with the minor tweaks and improvements that NextGen adds between versions.
Great, thanks, Joe. Can we use the Refund Manager and bypass the Credit Scout portion?
Certainly. You could go ahead and use it just as a export-import tool between your accounting system and NextGen. That's kind of where Refund Manager started out before we added the ability to do distributions and help find the credit balances, those functionalities that the Credit Scout provides. But you're welcome to use, as much or as little of it as you'd like. We have some clients who, as a matter of rollout, get started a certain way and then over time expand their use of it.
Great, thank you. Next question. Oh, it's a comment. Thank you. I learned a few things and can't wait to explore credit distribution. Yay! Thanks for the feedback. Next question. How does it know which address to send to?
Going back to the earlier question about first, how does it know how to refund to, right? It first goes and looks at the bucket with the credit, and then who owns that bucket with the credit, right? Which insurance, or is it the guarantor? Then from there, there's a alternate address book in Refund Manager for refund addresses, and that kind of predates the capability of doing that in NextGen. The upside of that book is you can have several refund addresses defined per entity. So this is very useful on kind of generic payer type situations. What it'll do after that is if there's no Refund Manager alternate address selected, it'll go look at the NextGen refund addresses and see if they're populated. If there are, it'll pick one of those. And if not, it'll default down to the standard address on the person or the payer. So there's just a hierarchy it follows to determine what address it should use.
Great, thank you. And it looks like this might be our last question, but we'll hang on for another minute in case people are typing in the meantime. How many distribution, debit, TRX, and credit TRX codes should we have?
The transaction codes really depend on the practice. What we saw on the screen there when I went to process the refunds was we had kind of the default one, which was a nice refund insurance and refund patient. We have some practices who have their refund codes set up by financial class. So you might have Refund Blue Cross Blue Shield, Refund Aetna, Refund United, things like that. And there is a spot in Refund Manager where you can build that mapping by financial class to refund code for the payers. And if an entry exists, it'll use that. And if it doesn't exist, it'll go ahead and use one of those two refund codes that we have as the defaults. So then it would probably fall down to Refund Insurance.
Great, thanks, Joe. Looks like another question came in. How much does this cost? Tom, you want to grab that one?
So yeah, we have, I guess there's three components to the pricing. One, there is a license fee, which is a one-time fee. There is an installation, configuration, and training fee, which is a one-time fee. And then there is the third component, which is the annual software maintenance fee. We have basically two license levels, a professional license, and then for large organizations that have multiple practices set up, we have an enterprise license as well. So we can talk about specific pricing. The pricing ranges basically from $12,000 on up to $35,000.
Great, thanks, Tom. And looks like we got another great question. Does the refund go to the guarantor or the patient? Say, for example, the patient is 6 years old. How does it know?
The refund does go to the guarantor. So, a lot of times when we generically say patient refunds, the address used and the person used on the refund is the guarantor. So that is intentional and for that reason, and again, caring for elderly populations, things like that. So the patient refunds, the checks are by default cut to the guarantor unless you set up like an alternate refund address.
Perfect. Thank you, Joe. And it looks like that is the end of the questions. But again, if you have questions after the fact, or if anything else occurs to you, you see Tom and Joe's information up on the screen. Feel free to reach out directly to them. You can always reply back to my emails. I'm the one who sends out the webinar invitations, and I'll also be sending out a link to the slides and the recording. Basically, any way that you can get a hold of us, try to get a hold of us, and we're really happy to help. We're here to answer questions. That's what we like to do. So find a way to reach out to us, and we'll get you an answer. And hope to see you at next week's educational webinar on using defaults and favorites in NextGen. And in the meantime, have a great week, and thank you everybody for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.